Hi, welcome to the Coaching Dimensions podcast, where people, policy and success come together. I'm Melissa Fazackerley, Director of Dimension H&S Limited and the host of Coaching Dimensions podcast. Remember to give us a like, follow and comment even before we get started. Hi, welcome to the Coaching Dimensions podcast, where people, policy and success come together. Today, I am very excited to say I've got Karen Hewitt with me. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
Excited.
Good. Me too. So just for anybody who doesn't know you, I'm not sure there is many who don't, but for anybody that doesn't know you, do you want to kind of introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Melissa. So I've been a specialist in the people side of health and safety for the last 15 years. So specialists in designing and delivering leadership and culture change programs for health and safety. So I've done that in two large organisations with 40,000 and 80,000 employees. I've also implemented globally because I speak 5 languages, which is not to show off, but very handy when you find you've got a part of the world that needs something in a local language. And then the last few years, I've been working for myself with my company Leader-like, and we do the end-to-end implementations, but at the same time, we also do more dynamic interventions, upskilling health and safety teams in powerful conversation, storytelling, and stakeholder management. So the stuff that can really get you results fast when everything is changing around you. So that is me in a nutshell.
It's an impressive nutshell, Karen.
Thank you. I was impressed myself, though.
So, I didn't know you could speak 5 languages.
No, well, it's very hard work, but it is my passion. So I don't speak them all at the same time, although sometimes clients do ask for it, but I try not to have to speak them all at the same time. So it does take a bit of a ramp up time, but I did French and German at school, French in my first degree, taught myself Spanish and Portuguese.
That is impressive.
Yeah, you probably didn't think we were going to start like this.
No, no, I definitely didn't. I did GCSE French and A-level French, but I am not good at it at all. It's one of them things, isn't it? If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, I've had to work hard to use it over the years. So that is the challenge. You're right, because if you don't use it, you just forget about it. And then the fear sets in when you come to use it again, which is what does happen to me.
Yeah. Okay, so the next time we speak, just speak French and force me into picking up the French again.
It's a date. Let's do that.
So let's get on to proper stuff. I'll stop messing around. So obviously you've been working in health and safety leadership for quite a while now. What made you realise that something different was needed?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think so. It's when I first started working in health and safety, and I sort of fell into this job role more by accident because it was a global training role, and I didn't know anything about health and safety, didn't know anything about the oil and gas sector that I was in. But I did know how to engage people and to work a room. And as I used those skills, and I guess it was about 3 weeks in when I had a light bulb moment. That's what I call it, about health and safety and the need to engage people and take them with you and to create leaders all around you. So when I had that light bulb moment 3 weeks in, I realized that my job then was to create that light bulb moment in everybody else around me. And the only way to scale that up fast would be to, I guess, create that light bulb moment in people that could then pass that on. So kind of a ripple technique, would you call it? A ripple action, create that momentum in people through engagement and inspiration and understanding.
That's amazing. And 3 weeks, would you say that's like your sense of purpose now? That is what you are at the core?
Yeah, I would say what was really fascinating is sometimes you go into, I guess, roles in life, and we sometimes feel like a bit of an outsider, or maybe that's just me. but I think we've all got moments in our life where for different reasons we feel like we're an outsider and we don't fit in. And actually, I realize over the years that that outsider thing can actually be your superpower, because I don't really fit into health and safety. I've sort of backfilled my ability to fit in. I've done my NEBOSH diploma, really hard work, but I got it. I've learned a lot about health and safety along the way. I guess, on the job training through the people that I've worked with. But my real superpower is to bring, I guess, the communication skills, the leadership skills, the ability to read and work a room, the ability to speak lots of languages, to connect with people, to build trust. All of that is absolutely essential for health and safety. And through me coming at it as the outsider, yes, it did feel a little bit uncomfortable, and I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome around that. So we've got outsider syndrome, imposter syndrome. See how many more I could throw in there. But it's it really is my superpower. So it's, if you can find your niche, because health and safety is even though it's niche, it's huge, and we all come at it in different ways. There's all the technical skills, but the technical skills, the business skills, the leadership skills. So yeah, I've been through what I've done in the past, and through coming from the outside, I bring a unique lens to it, I would say.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, you've definitely been welcomed in the health and safety community.
I have been welcomed. And so, this outsider thing is purely a creation of my own making. Because look at me, I'm inside, I'm on your podcast. So, I'm inside with Melissa. So, it's not at all a criticism of the health and safety community, because one of the reasons I've stayed so long, at 15 years, because I do like to change things up a bit, is because I do love the people and they have embraced my quirky little ways. So it's been good.
It has. And I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of health and safety from an outside perspective, not necessarily yours, but from an outside perspective. Health and safety is just health and safety. But you said it there. There are so many facets to this profession. Anybody can kind of go wherever they want to go.
Yeah, they can. And there's also so much potential with younger people. I think even parents are a huge audience for health and safety. I'm having conversations with my 6-year-old daughter every day about health and safety. She spotted something unsafe already this morning, and I was coaching her on how to go and speak to somebody.
So, what did that look like? What did she spot?
Well, she's quite a somebody not wearing a helmet on a bike, and she's very forthright, shall we say. She's not frightened to get straight into the confrontation. So I have to encourage her to sort of back off a little bit. And, because it's very black and white when you're that age, and she is a very tenacious, confident girl. So I have to encourage her to sort of back off slightly and consider the bigger picture, how somebody's, all the stuff that I teach really, how somebody's going to feel when they receive that news, how you might approach it in a way that gets people thinking differently. So I've got the challenge of upskilling in my house every day.
A very relevant challenge, though. I mean, if you can coach a 6-year-old, I'm pretty sure you can coach a grown-up.
Yes, different challenges.
So, build, buzz and bake is something that you talk about. Tell me more, and what you'd like to come out of that idea.
Yes, so it does sound a bit like bumblebees and cooking, but I think the good thing is it's quite catchy. People sometimes struggle to say it, but it does sound like something a bit different. It's only got 3 steps to it, and I do think that helps people to remember it. And where it comes from, really, Cotter has an 8-step change model for organisational change, which is really informative. And somebody called Lewin has a 3-step model. And if you're just starting out with anything new, I think going straight for the complex model is not necessarily advisable. Sometimes you start with the simple stuff and it takes root quicker. You can understand it quicker. You can communicate it to other people. So Lewin's change model is unfreeze the organisation, change the organisation, and then refreeze it. So Build, Buzz, Bake is really built on, adapted from that. It's about building the foundations, which is preparing people for the change, doing the pre-engagement, speaking to the leadership team, doing your benchmarking, what does good look like, all of that stuff. And then you move to the change, which is about creating an experience for people and creating the conditions for change, communicating well, taking time, getting people together, collaborating. And then the bake is setting everything in place where you know that the change becomes self-sustaining. So things like if you've got specific behaviours you want to embed, how do they fit across the construction project life cycle? How do they fit across the employee life cycle through the organisation from when they arrive to when they exit? And so some of this comes into the design stage, the build, but really if you've done the build bit, then the bake is kind of already there, and it's just about looking for other opportunities to embed what you're looking to embed, really. So Build, Buzz, Bake is really a blueprint for cross-company influence and engagement for health and safety. And so my book, People Power, is Build, Buzz, Bake. 15 parts, 3 sections, and proven within the 2 large organisations that I worked with.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Should we touch on your People Power book then? I know I read that when it came out, and it was it's there as a background. It was a very easy to follow book. I think what you did, you explained it really well, and it was something that I could actually take away and try and implement in organisations. Tell us a bit more about that book, because it's an award-winning book. Is it an award?
Yes, it got 2 finalist awards. I can't remember the name of the awards now, but it got 2 finalist achievements. And what keeps me going is the feedback, really. So I think it's nearly 5 years old now. I've sort of lost track, but it really put me on the map and got me a lot of invitations to speak. And I still get a lot of invitations to speak. And I get feedback mainly on how useful it is, which makes me feel very useful, because as human beings, I think we often just want to be useful in life. And it was really tough to write it, because I started writing when I just had a baby. She was 3 months old. It was in the middle of COVID. I had a full-time job. So it took me a long time to sort of get lots of iterations. It felt very bitty. It didn't feel like a process that I'd look back and say, here's the ideal way to write your book. I felt like I was editing, shoehorning, updating, but somehow instinctively I must have followed the right process, because the feedback on it has been that it's really useful and practical. And that's all I wanted, really. I wanted to share what I had applied and what had worked with the rest of the world. And I love hearing that people are thinking laterally, so not just using that Build, Buzz, Bake for a cross-company implementation of engagement and culture around health and safety. People are using it in job interviews to show the strategy that they would take, for example, and other interesting applications. So I love the fact that it's helping people.
I love that. And I love that people are using it in different kinds of scenarios as well.
Yeah. So I love it. And I love the blue-green thing, which not many people know about. The idea was that green was the traditional colour of health and safety, and the electric blue was sort of blasting a bit of fresh air through it, which is what somebody said to me once when I stood up and did a session for a senior leadership team. She said, wow, you really blasted a wave of fresh air through health and safety then, didn't you? And that's kind of where the idea for the colours came from.
It's needed, isn't it? I think that breath of fresh air, or blasting that wave of fresh air through safety, it's needed to kind of change the perception as well.
Yeah, and the honest truth is I didn't know any other way, because, like I said, I was the outsider coming in with the more of the comms and marketing engagement background. So my blast of fresh air was just me being me, and discovered that it was what needed. I love doing it, and it worked.
We've got to be ourselves, Karen. Everybody else is taken.
We have.
So you bring various different elements into your work. I know you've talked about speaking, you've talked about your book, you've talked about the Build, Bake and Buzz model. What does a typical day look like for you?
There is no typical day. I'm managing a lot of different things, both in my working day and outside of my working day. As I'm a parent, I'm a carer, I'm juggling a business. And also, I guess the one common denominator is the kind of people I work with. I tend to work with health and safety directors, and they either get me in to work with their team or to speak to senior leadership, because it's sometimes easier to bring somebody in from the outside to do work with them. And sometimes they even get me in to work with their other stakeholders, like their partners. I did a session last week with an airport, and they brought all their partners in for the day, because I'm good at getting people involved, collaborating, taking people on a journey, giving everyone in the room a voice. So anything really that fits that bill, I could come in and help with. So it could be a straight brief. We want you to do a keynote, a practical keynote that people can take away with them. It could be a workshop. It could be upskilling other people to do what I do, to engage people in health and safety. It could be running a collaboration day, a strategy day. So if you think of it on a spectrum, I guess not training is imparting a lot of content, whereas what I do is a lot of sort of more facilitation, which is led by them. So it's less content from me, but more gathering the views in the room and taking them on a journey. So it's slightly different brain skills required, but very rewarding, because everyone else owns the day rather than me.
I've actually been, I was going to say subjected to one of your sessions then, and it's not the right phrase.
I know what you mean.
But it was at the IIRSM forum this year.
Yes, the organisational risk map.
Yeah. Should we talk about that a little bit?
Yes, why not? So yeah, that was interesting. And when I delivered that session, so I was alongside Elaine and Hugh, and there wasn't much of us involved, but there was a lot of them, the audience. So all we did was sort of step up, say, here's the idea. This is the idea the Ambassador Network have produced, this organisational risk map. What does it mean for you and the risk situations you're seeing? And the best thing about it, because obviously, as you and I know, this risk map is really, it shows the interconnections with different types of risks within an organisation, both the people risks, operational, strategic, more of the external risks. And it allows people to create a bit of a narrative. So if you pinpoint a risk in one area, you then sort of look at, so what does that mean? What other risks does that impact? And you can effectively create a bit of a story, which is what we need to influence upwards. If we can sort of join the dots with the rest of the organisation, we then create a story which is much more interesting to the top of the organisation. And the great thing about that workshop was not anything, wonderful as we are. It wasn't anything me, Hugh, or Elaine said, I don't think. I think it was the stories that they told. And we got really good feedback on that. And I know you were there, and I was blown away by the stories, just through applying that map, the risk stories that would have really made anyone sat in a boardroom sit up, I think, and take notice. So we often say, as health and safety people or risk professionals, that we can't influence the board, or we struggle to influence the board. I think it's about how we do it. And if we have a tool that allows us to create the stories, we're actually better at it than we think we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a lot of people in that room, and everybody was kind of split up on our tables. Just for anybody that wasn't there, I'll kind of give a little bit of a brief. So there was groups of people all sat on tables, and we were all given a huge sheet of paper, pens. A lot of us didn't know each other on the tables. And the task was to kind of pick elements to focus on from the ORM. And what was really interesting is that every single table, every single group came away with a different story, a different perspective, but also a different approach to risk and opportunity. So when we talk about safety professionals, the perception is that we prevent things from happening. And really, we want to facilitate this and we want to make things happen. We just need to do it in a way that helps the organisation. And that's something that stood out for me that day, is that people really embraced the opportunity around risk and what that could mean to an organisation.
Yeah, and now you mention it, I remember even after that workshop when we were walking around and networking and the awards event had started, people were coming up to me and said, we had a great idea in our group, but they either said we didn't feel comfortable enough presenting it back. So there was far more in there than we actually tapped into. And it really reminds me that we don't need to panic about influencing upwards. We just need to sort of reach out sideways, start to make some links, gather our story, maybe look at correlating data, what we've got with data in different departments. So working with our peers, but more horizontally, gathering the story and then letting the story flow upwards.
Yeah, just get that full
Like a balloon.
image.
Yeah.
Love it. I love this kind of stuff. I get I get really geeky about it. And I think anybody that knows me from an operational background or a board background, I am so keen on getting people involved because I don't know what they are subjected to on a day-to-day basis. We can make assumptions, and we all know what assumptions do. There's a famous saying, but to get people involved, I think it does more than build a story. It builds trust, it builds relationships, it helps people develop individually. So I can learn more about an operational role, somebody can learn more about safety from me. Like there's a whole thing around talking.
So here's an interesting thing, because the regulations talk about consultation, but I think really we've evolved from that. Yes, consultation matters, telling people what's going on for health and safety and gathering their views. So that whole consultation process. But I think if we think of it slightly differently, it's more about co-creation of the message, because health and safety is too important a message not to get through. And we want ownership. The only way you can get people to take ownership is to get them involved. So they need to be co-creating the health and safety messaging, not just being on the receiving end. And that's a lot of what I teach. I don't necessarily use the co-creation message, but it is for me. It's, not saying this is how we're going to do things, but saying here's an idea. This is why it matters. This is how we could do it. What do you think? And get them involved and then iterate till you get something that everybody's had a say in. And then you just, you eradicate resistance then, because people have already had a say.
You're absolutely right. And I think for people to, that's a process, isn't it? That's a process and that takes time. And I think always in the back of a safety professional's mind is compliance is a legal matter. And how do we look at that? Now, I know I've recently recorded a podcast with Emma Evans, health and safety lawyer. Her job title was much longer than that, so I've just ad hoc that one. But she was very much beyond the legal message. This is about people and getting people involved and what this looks like and understanding the organisation. Do you think board people not understanding their organisation sometimes?
Yeah, I think people don't always take time to understand the organisation. So I'm fully behind the compliance idea. I think what I'm challenging is the way we get to compliance, because if we try and go the fast way, it's not always the most effective way. And then we think we've got compliance, but we're actually fooling ourselves. Whereas if we slow down a bit and take more of a leap of faith, that maybe there's a different route to compliance, then I personally would have more confidence that people are doing the right thing than if I've just said, right, here's what we need to do, go do it. So, yeah, I think that takes us back to the ticking the box idea. If we truly aren't confident that people are complying, then we need to take a bit more of a risk with the process to get a less risky outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So your mission is to save lives through leadership. Do you have any kind of idea on what impact you might have had with that message in your work to date?
My goodness, what a question. And it's difficult because people sometimes ask me, and it's not the kind of thing that's easy to measure. But I do get people contacting me saying, I've used your thing that you taught me. And so I'll give you an example. There was a health and safety director that said that she'd had fabulous feedback on people in the organisation interacting with her team after the work I did with them. So they changed the way they communicate, and they were getting better feedback internally. So that is the kind of feedback which is amazing, but it's hard to put a number on it. And it doesn't mean it's any less important. So I see things and I hear things that are difficult to measure, and probably more difficult because I'm doing more ad hoc interventions these days because the world is changing so fast and a lot of companies aren't investing in long-term change. I'm being brought in for shorter stuff. So I try and build in some kind of measurement, but it's easy to measure impact on specific leading indicators if you're in it for sort of 18 months, 3 years. I've managed within organizations to show climate shift through the specific measures that we specified. But now really it's anecdotal feedback. And also I use the stuff that I do myself. I've used it to get where I am. So I know it works. It just is quite hard to measure the impact. It's really people out there coming back to me that say, I've used this stuff.
Yeah. And I think that matters as well, though, doesn't it? I mean, I'm a big advocate of if somebody has made a change or made a difference, then recognise it, even if it's just a statement. It could mean the world to somebody else, and it could be that encouragement that somebody needs. And obviously, I know your work has won you awards. You have been recognised for everything that you do. But I think beyond that, what really hits home, because you've not mentioned your awards, it's me waffling on about your awards. But what you're mentioning is that people are actually contacting you to say you are making a difference.
Yeah, for example, the Women in Safety program by L'Oreal, Rossborough, and Nike. I host that program. That's won an Institute of Leadership award, and it won that award based on all the testimonials we provided because the people who have sat that program have gone on to do amazing things. So the feedback comes from a collection of individuals. So it's up to me to compile all of that. I mean, I am working on a series of case studies now because I've been working with some really good clients over the last 12 months and me documenting what we've done. But I guess when you're busy doing, it's finding the time to collate these testimonials. But I've got a lot of testimonials. I've got stuff on LinkedIn and stuff lying around that I need to bring together. So I know it's working, but it's not so easy to measure.
So I suppose anything to do with people is a bit more difficult to measure, isn't it? Because it's difficult. I don't know why.
Because you're measuring, I mean, the ultimate measure is their impact. Does what they do, if they do something differently, does it change their impact? And does that impact lead to a different result? So let's say somebody decided to repackage their regular update to the senior leadership team, which is what I do sometimes with people, help them to communicate it differently. They get a different impact, which results in a different result. So let's say it resulted in the leadership team being more actively engaged on doing their leadership tours, whereas previously they weren't. So it's that measure of what you lead people to do with what you've talked about.
Do you think there's any kind of bad leader out there or poor leader, or do you think everybody can improve?
Yes, I think we're not born good or bad leaders. I think the challenge is we all have blind spots as humans. And the blind spots can be the things that stop us improving. So the challenge is how quickly can we not only be aware of our blind spots, but do something with them. And sometimes we're lucky enough to get feedback and we notice it and we adapt. So that's the first step, asking for feedback or noticing when it's there and realizing that there's a message in that feedback and doing something with it. So if I give you an example, with one company I worked for, I was busy communicating the change program I was about to launch, and I wasn't communicating a lot in great detail on how we were going to roll it out. And through feedback I was getting that it potentially wasn't going to work, reading between the lines, I realised that my judgment call not to give enough detail around the implementation or to leave it till later was the wrong call. So then I worked with people internally to produce a big internal sales kit, and they absolutely loved it. And the feedback was that it was one of the best ever launch programs. But had I stuck with my original approach and not interpreted that bit of negativity I got as feedback, then I wouldn't have evolved and the program wouldn't have evolved. So for me, there is, in what people say, everything is feedback, and how quickly can you notice it? Because none of us are perfect. I don't think there is a perfect leader, but I think the best ones are the ones that have that self-awareness to keep recognizing when they could do things differently and to do it.
I absolutely agree. And I think it's probably something that comes with us as we grow in our profession, as we become more experienced and we realise that we don't know everything. So with that being said, I guess the message to younger people wanting to come into the profession, younger people who are aspiring leaders, is to just listen.
Yeah. And it's and the learning opportunities are all around us. So when I'm running sessions, if I set people exercises, I often get a bit of paper out and I do the exercise myself so that I can experience what they're experiencing and also get my own learning, because we have blind spots. We know they're there, but we keep, if there were holes, we would keep falling into them. They say you have to fall down a hole about 9 times before you remember that the hole was there and you walk around it. So I think, young
9
people.
times?
Yeah, 9 times, yes. I know it's a bit awful, isn't it, for health and safety? You don't want to be falling down your whole once, let alone 9 times. But it's a metaphorical whole, Melissa, so don't panic. See, everything is feedback. Your reaction there was hilarious. Note to self, Karen, change metaphor.
Inducing panic. We don't want people falling down holes 9 times.
Yeah, because, we don't have to be perfect. But then, if you're always scanning the environment, you can see people's reactions to things, and something might not land quite the way you expected it. And then you read the signals and then you think, okay, what's the learning in that? So I think young people don't have to be perfect. They just need to be ready to learn and learn fast. And also they've probably got less biases, because the people with the most experience could potentially have the most biases. So we're all on a level when it comes to human settings. We're all on a level, really. So I think, there's the power to learn a lot from young people, from people whose brains work differently to yours, people that are just generally different. So, we've talked a bit about this before. That's why I like having people around me that see things differently, because then I get, your face then when I got a different bit of feedback was fabulous, because you get people that are receiving the same information but just interpreting it differently.
Yeah. That can be a challenge as well, can't it, I guess? Because you've got so many people in a room and everybody can interpret that differently. So it's how do you make sure that message lands?
Yeah, and I used to think that was a challenge. And my answer to that, secretly we all like to be sort of in control. My answer to that was sort of SWOT up on different personality types, communication methods. I've got so many tools to be very flexible no matter who I've got in front of me. And I used to think that flexibility was the answer. And in a way it is, because the ability to pivot and shift and come up with something different means you can adapt to any person, any situation. But I think what is most powerful and comes out more in my recent work is looking at human universals. No matter who they are, we have some universal needs, like, for example, to help people, to be recognized and valued, to be understood. So I focus on those universals. Otherwise, I'd probably tie myself up in knots on trying to understand every single person in front of me, because when the world went more global and then we have more different kinds of people, and now, even in terms of diversity and inclusion, that's more and more fragmented in a good way, I would say. We've got more and more different ways of thinking and approach to work. So I think, it's easier to look at the universals sometimes.
I think that's a really good point, that, Karen, because sometimes, in my experience, safety people can really kind of complicate it when we really need to go back to basics. I'm not talking about the 5 steps to risk assessment. I'm talking about what you've just said in terms of individual people, and recognise, somebody's made a good suggestion and it's actually changed the organisation. Recognise that. Reward them in some way, whatever that looks like for the business. But touch on that and people see that recognition and that they're being heard. And it's a basic thing that you can apply to anyone in any industry, in any kind of seniority within a business. Everybody likes those basic things being met, don't they? Whether they know it or not.
Yeah, so I think I am really starting more of a back to human movement, but in a way that there is a defined objective and a defined impact. So if I give you an example, the word care, we all know deep down that we want people to care about us, but there's a difference between saying, "Are you okay? How are you?" and saying that care is actually people caring about being heard and being understood. And it's important because it's the foundation for trust, which is the foundation for any kind of change. So I take some basic stuff, but I put it in context of, why it's there and what you can achieve with it. Otherwise, we could band around words that mattered, but they feel woolly, a bit. Somebody once said candy floss to me. So I take what could be banded as candy floss or sort of woolly stuff, and I try and sort of reverse engineer it a bit and say, yeah, it may look a bit woolly to you, but this is what we're actually talking about. This is why it matters, and here's some of the evidence.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That, and when you said care, then as a parent, I've got 2 teenagers. Caring looks very different. Caring can also be not giving that person what they want in that moment. It can also be a firm boundary when you're caring for someone.
Yeah, it's got a lot of definitions, the word care. So writing down moving from compliance to care, we probably, it's one word. If you were to get a room together of 25 people and ask them to write down what care meant, in fact, might do this one time, be really intriguing to see what we all come up with. And collectively, we might put those bits of paper together and discover that it means all these different things. And then you've got to agree, okay, which is the really important bit? Which bit are we going to work on and why? And how are we going to measure it?
Do you know what? Why don't we ask our listeners and viewers to comment on this with the word care and what it means and what that looks like?
Yeah, so we've talked about a couple of the meanings, and it'd be interesting to see whether there's a universal definition. Because it reminds me, sometimes this happened to me once years ago. I was in a meeting and I was facilitating a whole session around this one word. And then somebody challenged me on what we were doing. And I realized that we were all coming at it from different angles and we all had a different understanding. So I think we talk about things in health and safety, and when they get criticized for not being impactful or being woolly, it's because we haven't firmly defined exactly what we're talking about and how we want to measure it. So yes, bring it on. What does care actually mean? When we say moving from compliance to care, what's the specific behavior? Because if we want to change a behavior, we have to define what that behavior is in what context. So what is the specific behavior? We want people to care more. What do we want them to do?
Yes. Make those comments come in. Let's see what people say. Love that. So, let me have a think. Opportunities for professionals then, because obviously we've talked a lot around involving people and the human side of safety and leadership. What's the one biggest opportunity that you see at the minute for leaders to take advantage of?
It's an interesting one. What first came to mind is first opportunity is to, I guess, improve the way we read and work a room, because that can be used really powerfully in health and safety and across other areas, which brings me to my second point. I think So when I wrote my book, it was called Transform Your Business in the Era of Safety and Wellbeing. So it was a book written at a specific time during the COVID era, but really it's timeless. But what I'm suggesting with that is the time is now, because I know from the work I was doing at the time, as well as writing the book, that there was a massive focus on health and safety and caring for people, whatever that means, during COVID times. And there was an opportunity to leverage that sudden interest because people were setting up, in organizations, they were setting up cross-functional, cross-discipline task forces to manage health and safety in the context of COVID. So there were people from different departments all together. So for the first time, I think health and safety moved out of its silos and became a cross-disciplinary approach. And then obviously we've got the bigger people issues. A lot of companies are now looking at health and safety as a wider people approach. So we're looking at health and safety alongside diversity and inclusion, well-being, sustainability. And so if we roll that up into a broader people-based approach, and let's say health and safety was to report into HR, is an interesting statement, then that might, because if HR are responsible for the people in the business, then you then manage to get more of a risk-based approach to managing people, and you manage to link in with the other things like diversity and inclusion and well-being and correlate with that data. So I think there's a big opportunity right now to take more of a people-focused approach, which is why that organisational risk map that we were talking about really has all the people elements in the center, because organizations are very aware that a people-based approach pays dividends. It's just sometimes these different strands are a bit fragmented, whereas I think we've got an opportunity to ask, we want to be part of that wider people-based approach and we want to lead on it.
I love that. I think the point of COVID times kind of opening safety up into a wider organisational conversation was definitely something that I saw, and I know a lot of other people did. And it was kind of, for want of a better phrase, the making of health and safety.
Health and safety now has additional responsibilities a lot of times. So often I hear that the challenge is, with all the change going on and the additional responsibilities, that health and safety people are not freed up to take this more external looking approach and to go and have conversations outside. But I think there's an absolute balance to be struck to look at what do you need to say no to as a health and safety professional so that you can say yes to that vital intel gathering and networking across the wider organization that then brings more power to your health and safety approach. Otherwise, you end up in a chicken and egg cycle. You'll never be more part of the organization because you don't have the time. And if you don't take the time, you'll always be a siloed function, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think that's a great message to end on, to be honest, Karen. I think it's been really, really good talking to you, and your insights from a non-safety professional as somebody who's been in the safety profession.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting.
Yeah, I'm essentially a marketer. So, I was trained originally in marketing, and the first question you ask yourself is, who is my audience? So it makes you very externally focused, and everybody is a customer. So this has really led everything I've done.
Thank you for being a guest today, Karen.
Thank you. It's been lovely. We've gone places I didn't imagine we would go, but it's been really rewarding and I've learned a lot. Thanks, Mel.
Good. Just a reminder for all of our listeners and viewers, if you can put a comment in there as to what the word care means, what context, what that looks like for you, we would absolutely love that. I'm going to put a link to your People Power book, Karen, if that's okay. Yeah. And I'm going to put a link for the IIRSM ORM, the organisational risk map.
Yeah, fantastic.
In the post as well. So thank you very much. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening and watching. As always, we absolutely loved our guests and that they've taken the time out to get involved because they believe that people, policy and success really works. Remember to check out the links in the post and show notes and to head to the Dimension website for your free information sheet and more updates. See you next time.